So apparently the internet just tripped over what it swears is the biggest accidental leak of the decade. A Katt Williams moment so cryptic, so loaded with conspiracy flavor that TikTok detectives, podcast analysts, and comment section investigators are all screaming the same thing. Katt Williams just exposed Tekashi 6ix9ine's alleged secret deal with the feds. No documents, no receipts. It's not even a recognizable sentence. Yet the rumor waves exploded like somebody dropped FBI files into a campfire. Because the moment Katt blinked sideways and hinted that some people stay protected because they play the game smarter than others, the internet immediately decided he was talking about Tekashi, and that 6ix9ine never actually retired from cooperation mode. People froze that interview frame like they were studying historic surveillance footage. They circled his cheekbone angle, slowed the audio, treated his pauses like classified Morse code, and created TikTok's whisper narrating. Do y'all hear that? He knows. Suddenly, the world swore Katt wasn't just speaking, he was revealing, allegedly exposing ongoing deals, hidden immunity, and top-tier protection that fans interpreted through memes, paranoia, and caffeine-fueled imagination. Because online, one cryptic sentence becomes a conspiracy, and every rumor becomes a headline. The wildfire began with something so small, it shouldn't have survived more than 10 seconds online. A clipped slice of an interview where Katt Williams, in that signature cryptic genius way of his, delivered a few sentences that had absolutely nothing to do with Tekashi 6ix9ine or any government agency. He was talking about survival, industry hypocrisy, and how some people occupy spaces others can't. A perfectly normal Katt moment. But because he paused mid-thought, shifted his gaze, smirked a little too knowingly, and tossed in a philosophical curveball about staying protected, the internet immediately decided he had accidentally confirmed that Tekashi was still cooperating with the feds. In reality, Katt spoke like Katt always does, layered, comedic, and slightly mysterious. But rumor culture took that vibe and turned it into a cinematic leak. 1. TikTok caption, just 10 words long, birthed the entire conspiracy. He's obviously talking about 6ix9ine and still working with them. No context, no name drop, no evidence. But the algorithm grabbed that caption like it found buried treasure. The clip spread faster than rainwater on pavement. Suddenly, thousands of viewers developed instant expert witness energy. Convinced that the comedian had revealed some hidden deal, they weren't citing transcripts or documents. They were citing the way he looked away when he said that line. They slowed the footage, replayed the pauses, and treated ordinary body language like encrypted confession tape. Comment section detectives whipped out their imaginary microscopes. They wrote essays on eyebrow curvature, debating whether Katt's expression hinted at forbidden intel. One person said his pause before finishing a sentence was too heavy, proof that he'd been holding back the real message. Another swore his smile looked like the smile of a man who knows an open secret. And once people online convince themselves they've cracked a code, the code becomes truth to them, whether anything exists under it or not. The hysteria mutated fast. Social feeds began insisting Katt was implying Tekashi never actually disconnected from federal cooperation. Not because Katt said that, but because the internet interprets mystery as revelation. If someone as sharp and unpredictable as Katt Williams leaves space between words, viewers rush to fill that silence with conspiracy. They took his metaphors about survival and applied them directly to Tekashi's documented legal past, stitching imaginary dots into a storyline made purely from prediction, satire, and online instinct. Within hours, people treated the entire moment like the climax of a courtroom drama. Threads popped up titled, "Katt confirms what we all suspected." Videos whispered phrases like, "You have to read between the lines." Nobody questioned why there were no actual lines to read between. They just accepted the myth. People quoted parts of the interview so vaguely that they didn't even sound related to anything federal. Some folks survive because they operate differently. That sentence alone spiraled into meme lectures about Tekashi's past case history. as if the internet owned a private archive. Soon, whole TikTok channels dedicated themselves to breaking down Katt's coded message. Using detective-style edits with red arrows, dramatic strings, and slow-motion filters. If he lifted his hand, confirmation. If he stared forward, absolutely a signal. If he adjusted posture, that clearly meant he knew about a secret deal. One user even wrote, "Watch his left eye. When he looks down like that, it always means someone's talking about government protection." Where that theory came from? Thin air and highly caffeinated creativity. Twitter swarmed too. People who hadn't even seen the clip began retweeting interpretations that sounded like secondhand urban legends. Katt basically said Tekashi never stopped. Except he didn't. Commentators just projected decades of pop culture takes onto a sentence that didn't reference anyone by name. And because Tekashi is already a lightning storm of memes, scandals, and history, the rumor clung to him like static. People merged the memory of his past cooperation with Katt's general commentary about how some entertainers stay insulated. And the result became ongoing deal confirmed. Podcasters added fuel by speaking cryptically just for engagement. Some leaned closer to the mic, whispering he didn't have to say it out loud. We know who he meant. Others replayed that same 6-second clip on loop, nodding like smug scientists who just cracked a classified formula. But their entire analysis rested on vibes, nothing more. Nobody produced a statement, a quote, a record, or a source. Just facial reads and poetic pauses. And online, that's enough to create a cultural riot. Within a day, TikTok detectives began convincing themselves Katt was protecting his own safety by talking in riddles. Theories popped up, claiming comedians often speak indirectly when referencing dangerous information. Some pointed to his tone, calm, centered, unflinching, and called it the tone of a man who said more than he meant to. People who'd never taken a journalism class began calling themselves informational interpreters. They declared that the zoo-style conspiratorial pacing proved Katt was hinting at Tekashi's alleged connections with unseen hands, and because nobody can resist a good hidden truth. The rumor balloon inflated faster than any attempt to clarify context, and Tekashi's silence only poured gasoline on the fire. He didn't respond to the theory, didn't react, didn't post any shade, which, of course, made people certain it meant everything. If he laughed publicly, they would have said he mocked the truth. If he denied it, they would have called it damage control. But since he stayed quiet, theorists announced it was the silence of someone with too much to lose. In their minds, silence is never neutral. It's always justification. The conversation spread so fast that people started clipping completely unrelated Katt interviews and tying them into the narrative. Clips from years ago, interviews where Katt was talking about Hollywood networking, betrayal, survival. Suddenly, those lines were attached to Tekashi as retrospective hints. Someone posted, "Katt been trying to warn us," implying wisdom hidden between comedy punchlines. Entire compilations were created, layering edits with dramatic captions like, "When jokes are the truth hiding in plain sight." And nothing fueled this chaos more than the fact that nobody could define the alleged deal. What kind of deal? What agency? What terms? What proof? Nobody had any specifics. They just said deal. The vagueness gave it even more room to thrive. If something is undefined, people can attach anything to it. Like a blank canvas, rumor culture paints whatever storyline hits hardest. Some said it was an invisible arrangement. Others said it was a reason he moves freely. But none could reference a real moment where Katt ever claimed it, because all he did was speak philosophically and leave the rest in the hands of internet imagination. Once gossip platforms saw the views, they amplified it with professional-looking ambiguity. Fans speculate that Katt hinted at ongoing cooperation. Online theories erupt over comedians' comments. These headlines didn't assert anything, but they also didn't diffuse anything. They wrapped the rumor in pseudo-journalistic language that gave it structure. And to many viewers, structure is just as persuasive as proof. From there, discourse turned into digital performance. People weren't debating evidence, they were debating interpretations. They treated every facial twitch as a leaked classified memo. If a stranger disagreed, they accused them of protecting the truth. And once a public narrative hits that stage, it no longer matters what Katt said or didn't say. The myth becomes its own gravity. And that's exactly how the first wave of this saga formed. Not from revelation, not from confession, not from leaked intel, but from the internet turning speculation into prophecy and pauses into proof. That something enormous was allegedly hiding beneath the surface. In the age of rumor, even silence gets subtitles. The rumor didn't simmer, it metastasized like digital wildfire dipped in jet fuel. Within hours, the comment section scientists evolved into full-scale conspiracy cartographers, drawing invisible strings between Katt's words and Tekashi's entire public history. If anyone mentioned past trials, they treated that history like reincarnated prophecy. They acted as though Katt Williams had hand-delivered a secret message about ongoing arrangements, when in reality, all he did was speak philosophically about navigating dangerous spaces. Some TikTok creators even wore suits and fake glasses to look more official as they whispered into microphones about coded undertones. They screenshot Katt's expressions at maximum zoom until pixels turned into mosaic squares, then circled random shadows on his cheek to prove Tekashi was being indirectly referenced. They compared his cadence to famous cold case interviews. Someone claimed his tone matched federal informant testimony patterns pulled from crime documentaries, not actual legal transcripts, Netflix thrillers. But did that stop anyone from believing it? Absolutely not. It became evidence by vibes. Memes detonated in record time. People pasted Katt's face over FBI files. They clipped footage of him blinking while ominous bass rumbled underneath. They edited Tekashi into courtroom stills holding invisible paperwork. And the captions, ruthlessly dramatic. When Katt exposes the deal that never ended, Key tried to hide it in humor. The truth wasn't supposed to leak. It was satire. But some viewers didn't realize that. They treated memes like screenshots from investigative archives. Celebrity reactions, only through more gasoline into the rumor inferno. One rapper dropped a vague quote at 2 a.m. saying, "Some people never change." The internet immediately declared it a reference to Tekashi being forever federal. A comedian posted, "When you talk too loud, they hear you." That was enough to launch 1,000 stitches. Someone else uploaded a laughing emoji under a Katt clip, and fans dissected that emoji like a confession signature. Screenshots flew around with red arrows and timestamps. People arguing that public figures were co-signing Katt's revelation through coded agreement. Podcast hosts who had absolutely nothing to do with the situation suddenly recorded dramatic monologues about how Hollywood whispers travel. They predicted that the comment section was onto something big. They talked like detectives, warning citizens to stay aware. Meanwhile, the supposed leak still had no definition. Nobody could articulate what the deal even meant. They just repeated it like folklore. The deal. The phrase itself became a talisman. The vaguer it stayed, the more powerful the rumor got. An undefined conspiracy lets everyone write their own version of truth. And what really pushed the scandal into chaos territory was how viewers started retro-editing Katt Williams' entire career into evidence. Old comedy routines were treated like encrypted warnings. A 2018 joke about people getting saved by forces we never see got resurrected as hindsight revelation. A random monologue about snakes in the industry became foreshadowing Tekashi's protection era. Lines that were clearly about Hollywood corruption were pinned to federal conspiracy boards like confession fragments. People mashed clips into timelines that suggested Katt had been hinting at this for years, even though the only thing he'd ever actually done was be philosophical, sarcastic, and darkly comedic. Then came the faux investigative breakdown channels. Dramatic voiceovers, deep filters, soundtracks that sounded like budget spy films. They declared, "This is bigger than people think." They pretended to highlight coded keywords, which mostly just meant circling random phrases Katt used, because they were poetic. They said words like shield, protected, higher powers, and unseen arrangements where messages slipped between syllables. None actually referenced Tekashi, but in rumorland, proximity equals confirmation. If a sentence vaguely aligns with a pre-existing narrative, audiences glue them together with confidence and hype. The frenzy spiraled further when people began rage debating over whose interpretation of the message was correct. Some insisted Katt was exposing that Tekashi was still under federal safety umbrellas. Others claimed the deal was metaphorical, symbolic, emotional, spiritual. It didn't matter. The drama fed itself. Threads turned into academic panels. People typed essays like they were presenting research findings, except their citations were side-eye angles and movie-style hunches. One user said Katt knew too much to laugh that lightly. Another claimed his posture showed the weight of forbidden knowledge. If he lifted his eyebrows, it became enlightenment. If he squinted, it became confirmation. Meanwhile, Kashi, a walking algorithm trigger even on calm days, didn't post anything that helped cool the fire. He shared regular content, music clips, random scenery. But the absence of acknowledgement made theorists louder. They transformed silence into a spotlight. They called it strategic. They treated it like proof that any denial could be used against him. The whole thing became rumor quicksand. The more you tried to stand still, the deeper the narrative swallowed you. Even harmless comments became encrypted speech in the eyes of conspiracy readers. If Tekashi mentioned loyalty, theorists said it referenced cooperation. If he joked about safety, they said it was coded truth. If he said nothing at all, they said that was loudest of all. The imagination carnival was fully booked. When Katt Williams reappeared in another completely unrelated interview weeks later, people hunted that clip too. They examined eye directions, voice pitch, micro-expressions, and pauses like they were reading weather patterns. Someone claimed he blinked slower when the topic of loyalty came up. Another said the tone of his laugh had the weight of unfinished explanations. Edits surfaced with captions like he wanted to say more but couldn't. They layered random pauses with slow-motion filters to dramatize silence. Regular conversation mutated into theatrical tension. And once rumor energy gets momentum, everything becomes cinematic. People began talking like they had access to invisible files. "Someone knows something," they wrote. "It's too obvious." They pointed at nothing and called it the missing link. They scraped imagination for crumbs and called the crumbs patterns. It didn't matter if Katt never implied cooperation, or if Tekashi never addressed it. In the story the internet built, there were characters in a thriller that never existed. Eventually, even commentators who doubted the theory got swallowed by the tension. They'd post disclaimers saying it was all speculation, but end their statements with cryptic comments like, "But you never know." That tiny phrase was enough for theorists to declare, "See, even they think there's something real." Caution evaporated. Ambiguity became prophecy. People weren't following evidence. They were chasing adrenaline. As long as they felt something, the narrative lived. And that's the thing. The entire rumor cloud survived not because details existed, but because none did. The gaps let imaginations run wild, fueled by Tekashi's polarizing legacy and Katt's enigmatic delivery. The drama chain never needed a fact to sustain itself. It just needed tension, mystery, and an audience eager to believe that entertainment icons sometimes speak in riddles about unseen forces pulling strings behind the curtain. Because when a rumor feels cinematic enough, the less proof it has, the more people swear it's true. In the wake of this speculative superstorm, the strangest shift didn't happen on Katt's side or Tekashi's. It happened in the minds of the audience. Once the rumor reached critical mass, it wasn't treated like a flimsy theory at all. It became unquestioned folklore, whispered like ancient scripture, repeated as though every viewer personally read classified paperwork. even though no quote ever named Tekashi. No document was flashed, no receipts were shown, and Katt didn't actually accuse anyone of anything. Millions started speaking as if the alleged deal existed somewhere behind locked doors in a vault of digital mystery. Accuracy no longer mattered. Emotion did. Suspense did. And the thrill of believing you've decoded something the public wasn't supposed to see became intoxicating. The perception of Katt Williams, already wrapped in mystique, changed overnight. He wasn't seen merely as a comedian. He became the rumor realm's oracle. The kind of cultural figure people insist knows what really happens behind the curtain. Screenshots of his interview expressions floated around, captioned with, "He tried to warn us." People acted like he dropped veiled truths he wasn't allowed to say out loud. All because he delivered metaphorical commentary that fans warped into encrypted confession. And the more Katt ignored the chaos, the more viewers claimed that silence was proof of depth. As if the only reason he hadn't debunked the rumor was because the truth was too massive, too dangerous, too sensitive to touch. Nobody asked whether he was simply unbothered by fan fiction. As for Tekashi, his digital identity went through another transformation. The same internet that once called him the most polarizing figure alive now repainted him as a character living under metaphorical federal spotlights. Theories bubbled claiming he moved strangely because of underground protection, that his confidence came from invisible safety, that his no-response approach revealed immunity instead of indifference. People tied years-old headlines to Katt's sentence fragments, as if they were puzzle pieces in a conspiracy epic. Fans dragged out old cases, old memes, old interviews, applying fresh layers of meaning that were never there. It no longer mattered what Tekashi did say or didn't say. The rumor lens had replaced reality. The rumor lens had replaced reality. And in that rumor lens, people started imagining consequences that were bigger than any clip could justify. Some whispered about what this alleged deal meant for his relationships. Others speculated that Hollywood insiders had known all along. TikTok creators predicted dramatic fallout, even though nothing had happened in the real world. They scripted endings that existed only in fantasy, unmasking moments. Federal revelations, dramatic confessions, courtroom-style showdowns. The audience was so attached to its narrative that it demanded climax, closure, explosion, something cinematic and final. When a storyline takes root deep enough, it stops waiting for facts. Instead, people want a plot. Twist.Zeus interview footage became incident. Files, podcast segments became coded messages. Even the simple fact that Katt never clarified anything became strategic. Silence. Entire videos were devoted to slow-motion analysis of his body language, head tilt angles, breath pauses, micro-expressions. And the more people examined nothing, the more they convinced themselves something was there. Human imagination filled every gap with drama until the rumor resembled an investigative documentary instead of a social media misunderstanding. Then came the interpretation wars. Group chats splintered. TikTok panels argued over whether the deal implied protection, access, secret leverage, or just internet trickery. Some said it meant nothing at all, but even their skepticism fed the hype. In rumor culture, every voice becomes fuel. The arguments kept the story circulating, making it louder, thicker, harder to dismiss. Someone joked that Katt could have said, "Drink water," and the internet would have reacted the same way, convinced it was an encrypted reference to Tekashi's undertones. And honestly, they weren't wrong. Even the attempts to debunk the interpretation warped into conspiracy fuel. People who said, "This is overblown," got accused of downplaying or covering. Commenters insisted denials were suspicious. Analysts said the absence of explanation meant something huge lurked inside the silence. Most stories die when clarity arrives. But this one thrived specifically because clarity never showed up. Ambiguity is oxygen to conspiracy. And since Katt didn't provide a clean breakdown, audiences spun endless interpretations around the empty space.profile pages. Dedicated to exposing industry secrets turned the rumor into serialized content. promising part 2 coming soon. Entire channels built around celebrity whisper theories used it as a flagship example. If you know, you know. They wrote even though nobody actually knew anything. People preferred imagining a hidden truth over accepting the far more boring explanation. Katt Williams gave a philosophical answer, and the internet read into it so hard it invented an alternative universe. The longer the conversation stretched, the less anyone questioned how it began. Viewers forgot it started with a caption, a pause, and a clipped clip that never referenced Tekashi by name. They forgot everything hinged on interpretation, not information. They forgot the difference between inference and revelation. They just kept building lore. He never stopped cooperating became a statement repeated like fact. Even though all the so-called evidence was body language analysis and meme captions. In rumor culture, repetition is foundation. The more people echo a theory, the more it feels historical, and the long-term consequence. This narrative became stamped onto Tekashi's digital shadow. Whenever his name pops up online, someone in a thread inevitably whispers, "Remember when Katt hinted at the deal?" Even if no deal existed, even if no hint was ever given, even if the only truth was a collective hallucination disguised as insight. Internet memory latches on to the juiciest version, not the clearest. That's the wild lesson buried under the jokes, memes, captions, and frantic analysis. The internet loves a mystery it can't verify. It loves treating entertainers like riddle speakers, decoding symbols that don't exist. It loves building suspense where silence sits and claiming revelation where metaphor lives. Katt didn't expose anything. He didn't accuse anyone. Tekashi didn't respond. No documents surfaced. No proof appeared. But somehow, the audience stitched a rumor so dramatic that it eclipsed reality entirely. And even though nothing concrete happened, the imagination event alone reshaped how people interpret everything both men do going forward. If Tekashi ignores a topic, suspicious. If Katt smirks at a question, loaded. If either speaks vaguely about anything, here come the detectives again. That's how legends are born, not from truth, but from creative speculation that refuses to fade. Because once a rumor grows loud enough, it becomes a storyline that people rewatch, reinterpret, and resurface every time the energy feels right. And for as long as fans cling to the myth, the narrative never truly dies. It just waits quietly. In the corner of the internet, ready to wake the second someone blinks in a way that looks too mysterious to ignore. And that, my scandal-seeking detectives, concludes the internet's wildest collective hallucination. The unofficial conspiracy case built out of Katt Williams' sentences, eyebrow angles, and 6 seconds of footage that fans inflated into a full-blown federal deal leak. If you're still here after decoding expressions like a psychic with night vision goggles, admit it. You were hooked on every pixel. You followed the pauses like door codes, you replayed the laughs like confession audio, and you watched the rumor shapeshift into a blockbuster that never actually happened. But that's the magic of the internet. It doesn't wait for proof. It manufactures adrenaline, so before you disappear like a shadowy, unconfirmed source, smash that like button like it just spilled classified intel. Drop a comment with your favorite theory. Did Katt hint at anything at all? Or did TikTok detectives build an entire espionage storyline from thin oxygen and caffeine? Was silence suspicious or just silence? Spill it. I want every unfiltered breakdown, every wild stretch, every meme logic explanation. No judgment. This channel is built for overthinking. And hit subscribe like you're stamping a redacted document. Turn on notifications because the next celebrity, blink, cough, or eyebrow twitch could spark the next cultural meltdown. A misunderstood lyric, a vague live stream. One sarcastic interview, that's all it takes for the algorithm to explode into investigations. And when it does, you already know this is where the chaos gets narrated first. Stay sharp. Stay nosy. Stay dramatic. Because out here, every silence hides a clue. Every smirk becomes evidence. And every rumor gets treated like revelation. Expose, express, where speculation becomes history. Speculation becomes history.